32 million people have now had their first jab here in the UK, and today sees lockdown easing in England, with retail, hairdressers, gyms and outside dining all opening up.
But the situation couldn't be more different in developing countries, with many not even starting their vaccination programmes. The former Prime Minister Gordon Brown is trying to change that and joins us now. Very good morning to you, Mr. Brown. Wow, well, it looks warmer where you are than where we are.
Well, we had snow yesterday, actually, so it's a bit better today. And I can't start without saying, Kate, how wonderful it is that Derek is home, and
that's very kind of you.
Darcy and Billy. They must be over the moon, and it's great he's back with the people he loves, and I hope he'll make great progress.
Thank you. We're all hoping so too. That's really kind of you. And I know that actually your concern for people dealing with all the challenges of COVID is what you want to talk about, not just here in the UK, not just Derek, but actually across the world. And you want people to take, and countries to take, more responsibility in ensuring we try and work towards a global herd immunity.
Yeah, this can be done. Nobody is safe anywhere until everybody is safe everywhere. You know, if the disease keeps spreading in Africa and Asia, it will come back and haunt us here, it will mutate, and we'll still be in trouble several years from now. So it makes sense for us not only to help ourselves, but to help get the vaccination done in other countries. And at the moment, although 70 or 80% of adults in Britain are being vaccinated, it's less than 1% in sub-Saharan Africa, and only a few are getting access to the vaccines, and we've got to do something different. So the G7 meets in Britain in a few weeks' time. Boris Johnson is chairing it. They're the richest countries. They should come to an agreement. We'll pay 60% of the costs. Then Russia, China, the oil states, and all the other countries like Scandinavia can do more. We could pay to vaccinate the world if we come together and club together to meet the cost.
It's remarkable, isn't it, that, I mean, it's sort of... The developing countries are not able to vaccinate at the same rate, and I understand the campaign to put the money, you know, from the richer countries into it. But it's remarkable that even our neighbours in the EU are so far behind on their vaccination programmes.
So first we had to get the vaccine, and that's been a brilliant success. Then you've got to manufacture it. I think that supply problem, with all its teething troubles in Europe particularly, is going to be solved in the next few weeks. So we'll have the vaccines, then we've got to pay for them so that they can get round the world. And you know, when I look at some of the poorest countries in the world, they've got no social distancing because they're all crowded together. They don't have protective equipment, they don't have the doctors and the nurses, they don't have the ventilators that we've relied on. Now they've got to get the vaccine because it's pretty cheap. It can be, and the benefits economically, the trade starts, the economy moves forward, jobs are created, Britain benefits, everybody benefits, and really we need the same sort of collective effort we had with Live Aid in the 1980s, Make Poverty History in 2005. I talked to Bob Geldof yesterday because he was involved in all these things, and I think we need to press the richest countries to come to this deal, because it's in all our interest that this happens, and as quickly as possible, so the disease doesn't continue to spread.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose one of the challenges is that the vaccine maybe can be produced cheaply. Some people challenge the pharmaceutical companies for costs that have been involved in that, but also the actual rolling out of it isn't cheap. We in this country, like countries around the world, are going to have huge economic challenges. We've got enormous debt. There'll be people thinking, hang on a minute, can we afford to support those in the developing country when we're even still trying to get through our own vaccination programme? They are going to think that whatever it does longer term.
Susanna, you put the point that people will say, look, charity begins and perhaps for some people it ends at home, but we've got to do both, because we are all affected if we can't vaccinate in these other countries. We see the disease spreading in South Africa and Brazil. It will come back to us very quickly if we can't stop it now. And so quick vaccination, getting nurses and doctors in other countries to be able to use these vaccines, which have been a brilliant success of scientists and medics. It would be a shame if we ended up with a kind of apartheid where some had it and others didn't, resentments built up, and you have a world of the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, and quite simply, we won't be able to travel if that's the case. We're opening up now, But if we don't get this sorted out, we may have to close down later.
Gordon Brown, the Labour Party currently is against vaccine passports. But what is your personal view on that? Because there's a, you know, as we open up today, people are saying, well, you know, once we're vaccinated, we should be able to do far more. And the way of proving that you've been vaccinated is that you do have some sort of document. Whereas on the other side, there are people who say, well, actually, that just changes our whole relationship with the state. You know, if you need a passport to prove that you should be able to hug your mother, you know, what have we become as a society? Where do you stand personally, quite apart from the Labour Party, on that?
Well, we've had this well, Susanna, we've had this debate before, and you rightly said, can you administer the vaccine? Can you administer this passport? Is it going to be possible that 60 million people can be able to produce a document one way or another? Is it on your phone? Is it a certificate? How is it going to be done? What if you fall through the net and yet have been vaccinated? I think the government's going to answer all these questions first. And we've got to be clear that this could actually be done. So I think it's a practical question. Can you actually deliver this in a way that is fair to people and you don't end up with so many anomalies that people are going into the pub and saying, oh, I never got it sent to me, or my phone has not got the app on it in the way that it should.
But
We've really got to make sure it can be done.
If we could practically fix it, you know, in terms of civil liberties, does it jar with you?
Not if it saves lives. Look, I recognise that it could be intrusive in the way that people might use it to discriminate against people. But the truth is, it's very difficult to see how it's going to work very effectively in the short period of time you now need to get it up and running. So I would say to the Health Minister, you've got to answer these questions now.
We're learning so much this morning, and have been over the weekend, about the huge influence the Duke of Edinburgh had on many people, not just as the grandfather of the nation, but those who met him directly. And you were one of those, weren't you? You met him in your 20s.
Yes.
And he had a piece of advice for you. Tell us about that, Gordon.
Well, I was a student at Edinburgh University, very near here, when I was a teenager. And I just graduated and I became the rector of Edinburgh University, and he was the chancellor. And of course, the university establishment didn't like the fact that a student had been elected as the rector to chair the university court, and they tried to change the rules, and they would like to have got rid of me. And who stepped in to save me? The Duke of Edinburgh.
Wow.
So he wasn't a traditionalist, he wasn't an establishment figure. He was a person who had a very independent mind. And you know, your feature a few minutes ago about the numbers of young people, including in my own family, who've been helped by the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. This is in 140 countries around the world. It's fantastic that so many young people, 400,000 in Africa at the moment, are on the Duke of Edinburgh scheme. And it's lasted for 65 years. You know, when you had the Peace Corps in America, it no longer exists in the same way. But this has lasted, continued to change. And you saw the effect on young people's lives in that marvellous film that you showed a few minutes ago. And that's what makes him one of the great public servants of our time. And he will be long remembered for that.
That's remarkable. So he saved your job.
Did he tell you why he took a fancy to you and defended you?
I think he had a strong sense of what was fair and unfair, and I had been elected as the rector, and usually they elected famous personalities as rectors, and they'd elected me as a student, and I think he saw that it was unfair for the university establishment just to pick on me because I was a student, and I was very grateful because he stepped in at that time. And you know, I think the Queen would allow me to say this. When I've met the Queen in recent years, and I ask her, first of all, because he had become frail over a number of months and years, how is the Duke of Edinburgh? You could see her eyes light up, and how much this partnership mattered to her, how much this bond between them was so strong. And just to ask about the welfare of the Duke of Edinburgh, it was something that she responded to in that way. And these are two great public servants who the country must be very grateful for the service they've given over, 70 and 80 years in public life.
Gordon Brown, I think you're absolutely right, because at the heart of this is a relationship between two people.
It's a love story.
More than 70 years of marriage, which is extraordinary by any measure. And when you see photographs of the Queen with the Duke of Edinburgh, she always is looking at him with love.
There's always a sparkle and a private look somehow between the two of them, even when they're in a big crowds. It's lovely. And you've summed that up. And
yeah, well,
they saved you
that's
too.
That's why you've got to feel for her. Yeah, that's why you've got to feel for her this morning.
Right.
There will be a void in her life, as I think Prince Andrew said, and we all feel for her.
An unreplaceable void. Good to talk to you this morning, Gordon Brown.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks so much. I just think that relationship between the two
Amazing.
was so strong, wasn't it?